Hey there. Tonight, we're diving into life as a Roman soldier. Endless marching, stale rations, sour vinegar, brutal training, constant disease, and your own commanders. Forget the Hollywood version. This was survival, not glory. Most of us wouldn't last a week. If you're into raw history, hit like and subscribe. It really helps. Always cool to see who's out there winding down with me. Congratulations, you've just been conscripted into the Roman legions around 100 CE. The good news? You're about to become part of the most formidable military the ancient world has ever known. The bad news? Almost everything else about your new life. Your recruitment wasn't exactly voluntary. Perhaps you're a poor farmer's son with few prospects, or maybe you committed a minor crime, and this was your alternative to harsher punishment. Either way, you've just signed away the next 25 years of your life, if you even survive that long. Your first day begins with a medical examination that's brutally efficient. Roman recruitment officers aren't interested in your dreams or ambitions, just whether your body can withstand the crushing demands ahead. They examine your teeth, check your eyesight, and measure your height. You need to be at least 5 feet 8 inches tall, quite towering for ancient times, when the average man stood several inches shorter. Too short, too bad. Physical defects of any kind, dismissed immediately. The Legion wants only prime physical specimens, and you've barely made the cut. The oath you're forced to swear is called the Sacramentum Militari, and it's no mere formality. You're pledging absolute obedience to your commanders and the Emperor himself, under penalty of death. This isn't just a job, it's surrendering your entire existence to Rome. The weight of these words will follow you through freezing mountain passes, scorching deserts, and blood-soaked battlefields for decades to come. And as you recite this oath alongside hundreds of other nervous recruits, you still have no idea what horrors await you. Your training begins immediately, and it's designed to break you. Roman drill instructors make modern boot camp look like a leisurely holiday. You march 18 miles in 5 hours, carrying full equipment weighing over 60 pounds. Then you do it again the next day, and the next. Your feet bleed inside your new caligae, hobnailed military sandals that leave distinctive marks wherever Roman armies tread. These aren't designed for comfort. They're designed to last, and your feet are expected to adapt or fail. The blisters form, burst, and form again until calluses develop. Many recruits drop from exhaustion in these first weeks, some never to rise again. Sleep, that's now a luxury you barely remember. In training camp, you're woken before dawn by the Bucina horn's mournful call, and your day doesn't end until well after sunset. You're housed in a barracks with 7 other men, sharing a small space that smells of sweat, leather, and fear. Privacy is non-existent. Every bodily function, every moment of weakness or pain, witnessed by your contubernium, the smallest unit of soldiers who eat, sleep, and fight together. These men will become closer than brothers, not from affection, but from necessity. They'll be the ones who drag you from the battlefield if you fall, or who will collect your pay if you die. The food, which once sounded adequate when you enlisted, now reveals itself as monotonous torture. Your daily ration centres around 2 pounds of wheat, which you must grind yourself each morning. This becomes a hard biscuit called buslatum, or a porridge so bland it makes your former peasant meals seem like exotic feasts. Occasionally, you receive salt, olive oil, and sour wine called posca, vinegar diluted with water and herbs. Meat? Maybe once or twice a month, usually tough, stringy portions that leave you more frustrated than satisfied, but you quickly learn to stop complaining. Veterans force-feed sand to recruits who whine about the food. You'll eat anything when you're hungry enough. Your weapons training is relentless and punishing. The gladius, Your short sword weighs 2 pounds, but after hours of practice drills, it feels like 20. You learn to thrust, not slash, aiming for the vulnerable belly and throat of enemies. Roman officers aren't interested in fair fights or heroic duels, they want efficient killing machines. Your training sword is made of wood but weighs twice as much as the real thing, ensuring that when you finally hold actual steel, it feels unnaturally light in your hand. Your arm muscles tear and rebuild, until the movements become instinctual, mindless, exactly as intended. Meanwhile, your shield, the famous rectangular scutum, is a monster that dominates your existence. At 40 inches tall and weighing over 20 pounds, it's as much a burden as a protection. You learn to form the testudo, or tortoise, formation, locking shields above and around your unit to create a nearly impenetrable shell. The drill sergeants walk across the tops of your shields while you hold this formation, and if anyone's knees buckle, the entire unit is punished. Your shoulders scream from the weight, but you dare not drop it. In battle, this shield will be the difference between life and death. Your left arm grows disproportionately muscled from carrying this burden day after day, year after year. The centurions, your direct commanders, carry vine staffs called vites, and you quickly learn to fear them. Discipline in the Roman army isn't about verbal reprimands or push-ups, it's about brutal physical punishment. Minor infractions earn you a beating that leaves welts and bruises. More serious offences might result in fustuarium, being clubbed to death by your own comrades. And desertion, that's among the highest crimes possible. Those caught trying to flee are typically crucified while their former brothers in arms are forced to watch. The message is clear: Rome owns you completely now. By the time your 4 months of basic training ends, you barely recognize yourself. Your body has been reshaped, hardened, scarred, and strengthened. Your mind has been reformed as well, trained to follow orders without question and to view death as an acceptable occupational hazard. You've been transformed from a civilian into a component of war, and this is still just the beginning of your 25-year commitment. The real horrors haven't even started yet. So, you've survived basic training. Congratulations! You're now property of the Roman military machine, a single cog in an engine of conquest that spans 3 continents. Your first deployment awaits, and it's not to some comfortable garrison in sunny Italy. No, you're heading to Britannia, that cold, misty island at the Empire's northern frontier, where hostile tribes still resist Roman rule. The journey itself is a trial that claims the lives of many legionaries before they ever see battle. The march to your new station is punishing. 20 miles per day, every day for weeks. There are no rest days, no comfortable inns along the way. You sleep in hastily constructed marching camps, erecting and dismantling fortifications daily. Even after exhausting marches, you must dig trenches, hammer in defensive stakes, and build ramparts before you can rest. A legionary carries his own entrenchment tool, a dalabra that serves as both pickaxe and axe. Your hands blister, then callous, then blister again in new places. The weather turns against you, freezing rain soaks through your woolen sagum cloak, and your sodden leather armour begins to rot against your skin. The sea crossing to Britannia introduces you to new miseries. Ancient ships weren't built for troop comfort. You're packed below decks with hundreds of other men, the air thick with the stench of vomit, as soldiers unused to sea travel retch with each wave. The journey can take days or weeks, depending on winds and weather. Disease spreads rapidly in these conditions. Dysentery, the bloody flux, moves through the ranks, leaving men weak and dehydrated. Some don't survive the crossing. Their bodies are unceremoniously consigned to the waves, their pay distributed among their contubernium. You wonder if the same fate awaits you. Upon reaching Britannia's shores, reality sets in. This isn't the Rome you've heard about, with its marble buildings and sophisticated culture. This is a wild frontier of dense forests, marshes, and hostile locals who know the terrain intimately. Your first night on British soil, you hear strange calls from the darkness beyond your camp. Veterans tell tales of the painted warriors, the Picts and other tribes who strike without warning, who melt into the mists like ghosts. Sleep becomes even more elusive as you imagine throats being cut in the darkness. Your permanent camp, or castra, is only marginally better than the marching camps. You're assigned to a barracks room measuring just 10 by 10 feet, shared with your 7 contubernian brothers. Your bed is a straw mattress on a wooden frame. Your possessions limited to what you can store in a small chest. Privacy doesn't exist. Every bodily function, every moment of weakness, every nightmare that wakes you sweating in the dark, all witnessed by your roommates. They see you at your worst, and you see them at theirs. This forced intimacy creates bonds that transcend friendship, but also breeds tensions that occasionally explode into violence. The daily routine crushes any remaining individuality. You rise before dawn at the sound of the Bucina horn. Roll call and inspection come first, your centurion checking weapons, armour, and appearance with meticulous attention. Dirt under your fingernails? That's punishment duty. Rust on your gladius? That's docked pay. Your armour not polished to a shine? That's a beating with the VTs. After inspection comes drill. Endless, mind-numbing drill. March in formation, form the testudo, break and reform, charge and retreat. The same movements practiced until they become automatic, until you could perform them half dead or blinded by blood and smoke. Your personal hygiene becomes a distant memory of civilian life. The bathhouses that Romans are famous for, those are for established forts in pacified territories, not frontier outposts. Here, you make do with cold water washing when possible. Your hair is kept short to prevent lice, though they find you anyway. Your beard is required to be clean-shaven, a practice started by Alexander the Great to prevent enemies from grabbing facial hair in close combat. Shaving without soap, with a dull bronze razor, often leaves your face nicked and bleeding. Dental hygiene consists of rubbing your teeth with rough cloth or chewing certain herbs. Your teeth begin to decay from the coarse army bread filled with stone particles from the millstones used to grind the grain. The pay that seemed so generous during recruitment now reveals itself as barely adequate. You earn 300 denarii annually, more than many civilians, true, but subject to numerous deductions. Food, clothing, weapons repairs, burial club dues, all taken directly from your stipendium before you ever see a coin. What remains is carefully divided, some sent home to family if you have any, some saved for your retirement fund, and precious little for immediate use. The army doesn't want wealthy soldiers. Wealthy men start thinking they have options. The system is designed to keep you dependent, obedient, and focused solely on survival. And always there is the threat of combat. Not the glorious battlefield confrontations depicted in poetry, but brutal, terrifying encounters with an enemy who refuses to fight by Roman rules. Night raids on your camp, ambushes during patrol, finding the mutilated bodies of comrades who wandered too far alone. The tribes of Britannia don't form neat battle lines or signal their attacks. They emerge from forests and mists with eerie war cries, their bodies painted blue with woad, their hair stiffened with lime into frightening spikes. They seem to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly, leaving death in their wake. Your first skirmish comes 3 weeks after arrival. Your sentry is patrolling the edge of a forest when arrows begin thudding into shields and flesh. Men drop screaming. There's no time for fear. Your training takes over as you form a defensive position. The world narrows to the small space in front of you. You see painted faces, hear inhuman screams, feel the impact of weapons against your shield. When an enemy warrior appears in the gap between shields, you thrust your gladius forward as trained, feeling the sickening resistance as it penetrates flesh. The man's eyes widen in shock. Hot blood runs down your arm. You've taken your first life, but there's no time to process this. Another warrior is already replacing him. The skirmish ends as suddenly as it began. The attackers melt back into the forest, leaving your sentry counting its dead and wounded. 4 men killed, 7 wounded seriously enough to require evacuation. You help carry the bodies back to camp, the dead weight seeming impossibly heavy. That night, as you clean blood from your armor and weapons, you realize your hands are shaking uncontrollably. Veterans notice but say nothing. They've all been through this initiation. Some find you later, share their wine ration, tell crude jokes to distract you. This too is part of becoming a legionary, learning to carry the weight of death without breaking. Medical care in the Legion is surprisingly advanced for ancient times, but still primitive by any modern standard. The medicus attends to the wounded, setting bones, stitching cuts, cauterizing deeper wounds with hot iron to prevent infection. Screams echo from the valetudinarium, the military hospital. There's no effective anesthesia beyond strong wine or opium for the lucky. Many wounded die not from their initial injuries, but from subsequent infections. Gangrene means amputation, performed with a saw and brutal efficiency. Survival rates are low. Some men, facing such prospects after serious injury, beg their comrades for a quicker, more merciful death. Disease claims more legionaries than enemy weapons ever will. Close quarters, poor sanitation, and varied climates create perfect conditions for illness to spread. Malaria is common in many regions where Rome campaigns, bringing fever and weakness that can recur for years. Typhoid sweeps through camps where water sources become contaminated. Tuberculosis finds fertile ground in the damp barracks where men are packed tightly together, sharing air and coughing through cold nights. The medical knowledge of the time has no effective response to these invisible killers. Winter in Britannia reveals new dimensions of misery. Your regulation clothing, a tunic, cloak and sandals, was designed for Mediterranean climates, not the bone-chilling damp of a northern Europe. The Legion adapts somewhat, issuing you thicker cloaks and allowing you to wear braque, trousers like the locals wear, though traditionalists consider them unmanly and barbaric. Still, nothing truly keeps out the persistent cold and damp that seeps into your barracks, your bones, your dreams. Frostbite claims fingers and toes among the most unfortunate. Hypothermia takes the weakest during sentry duty on particularly bitter nights. Food supplies dwindle as winter deepens. The standard rations become even more monotonous. Grain, more grain, occasionally supplemented with whatever local produce can be requisitioned or purchased. Hunting parties bring in game when possible, but it's never enough to feed an entire legion. By midwinter, hunger becomes a constant companion. You learn to ignore its gnawing presence, just as you ignore the cold, the fear, the longing for home. Stoicism isn't just a philosophy in the legions, it's a survival mechanism. Letters from home arrive rarely, if at all. Many legionaries are illiterate, relying on the camp clerks to read and write correspondence. News travels slowly across the empire. By the time you learn of family births, deaths or marriages, months or years have passed. The emotional distance grows alongside the physical separation. You begin to feel like a ghost, disconnected from your former life, existing only in the eternal present of military service. Some men stop writing home altogether, finding it easier to sever ties completely than to maintain this tenuous, delayed connection. Religion offers some comfort in this harsh existence. The Legion has its official cults and ceremonies. Standards are treated as sacred objects, offerings made to traditional gods before battle. Many soldiers also carry personal charms or make private devotions to deities from their homelands. Others adopt the mysterious Eastern faiths that spread throughout the Empire. The cult of Mithras is particularly popular among soldiers, with its emphasis on brotherhood, courage, and moral purity. Some even whisper of a strange new Jewish sect centered around a crucified prophet, though openly practicing such unsanctioned faiths can bring suspicion from officers concerned about divided loyalties. And always, there is the gnawing awareness of your mortality. Death surrounds you, from combat, disease, accidents, or punishment. You've seen men crushed during construction projects, drowned crossing rivers, executed for desertion, gutted by enemy blades. The Legion's burial club ensures you'll receive proper rites, rather than being left for scavengers. Small comfort though that is. Veterans become fatalistic, making dark jokes about death that new recruits find disturbing. But in time, you develop this same gallows humour. It's either laugh at death or be paralysed by its constant presence. 6 months into your deployment, you're no longer the same person who left home. Your body bears new scars. Your mind carries images that can never be unseen. You've killed men whose names you'll never know, for reasons explained in terms of Rome's glory and security. You've watched friends die screaming, held their hands as the light faded from their eyes. You've endured physical hardships that would have seemed impossible in your former life, and you've done all this for a cause that feels increasingly abstract the further you get from Rome. Britannia doesn't feel like part of some glorious empire. It feels like exile to the edge of the world. The worst part, this is just the beginning. Your 25-year term stretches ahead like an endless road disappearing into fog. If you survive, and many don't, you have decades more of this existence before you can claim your retirement benefits. A plot of land, a pension, and Roman citizenship if you don't already possess it. The enormity of this commitment sometimes hits you in quiet moments, leaving you breathless with despair. But such thoughts are dangerous. You push them away and focus on the immediate, the next meal, the next patrol, the next battle. This is how legionaries survive, one day at a time, never looking too far ahead. Your second year in the Legion brings new challenges as Rome pushes further north into unconquered territories. Construction becomes as much a part of your life as fighting. Roman armies don't just march, they build as they go. Roads cut straight lines through ancient forests, bridges span rivers that locals considered uncrossable, forts rise from empty plains in a matter of days. As a legionary, you're expected to be as skilled with construction tools as you are with weapons. Every day not spent fighting is spent building. The road construction is particularly brutal. You clear trees, dig drainage ditches, break and haul stone, lay precisely fitted paving blocks, all under the watchful eye of military engineers who accept nothing less than perfection. These famous Roman roads will last for centuries, but each mile costs blood and broken bodies. Men die from exhaustion, from accidents with tools, from falling trees, or collapsing earthworks. The centurions drive you mercilessly. These roads aren't just for travel, but for rapid military response. Roman dominance depends on mobility, on being able to move troops quickly to trouble spots. Your suffering serves a strategic purpose. Small comfort, though that is as you work through blistering heat or freezing rain. Fort construction proves equally demanding. A legionary fortress is an impressive feat of engineering, a miniature city built to standardized plans, with barracks, headquarters, granaries, workshops, and defensive walls. You learn to build with surprising materials, not just stone and timber, but sun-dried brick, cement, concrete, even specialised tiles for heating systems. The skills you acquire would make you a valued craftsman in civilian life, if you ever make it back to that life. For now, your expertise serves only Rome's expansion. Interactions with the local population become increasingly complex as the occupation continues. Some tribes submit to Roman rule, seeing the benefits of trade and protection. Others resist fiercely, conducting guerrilla campaigns against isolated units. You're taught to view all locals with suspicion, even those who appear friendly. Any civilian could be an informant for the resistance, any feast an opportunity for poison, any woman offering comfort a potential assassin. This constant vigilance wears on your mind, making relaxation impossible even during rare moments of downtime. Still, human nature finds ways to adapt. Despite prohibitions, relationships form between soldiers and local women. Children of mixed parentage appear in settlements near the forts. Some officers look the other way, recognizing that such connections actually help pacify regions by creating personal bonds. Others strictly enforce the ban on marriage for active legionaries, punishing those caught in long-term relationships. You witness the heartbreak when units are suddenly transferred, leaving these unofficial families behind with no legal recognition or support. The longer you serve, the more you notice corruption seeping into daily operations. Centurions sell exemptions from the worst duties to soldiers who can afford them. Supply officers skim from food shipments, selling the surplus to local merchants. Promotions go to those with connections rather than merit. You watch idealistic recruits become cynical veterans, learning to navigate the system of favours and bribes. Some find ways to supplement their income, taking protection money from local businesses, smuggling goods, acting as mercenaries during official leave. The distinction between protecting the empire and exploiting it blurs with each passing year. Violence becomes normalized, not just in battle but in everyday life. Discipline is maintained through brutal public punishments. You witness decimation, the execution of every 10th man in units that showed cowardice, only once, but their image is seared into your memory. The chosen men beaten to death by their own comrades, who must either comply or face the same fate. More common are floggings that leave men's backs in ribbons, or the fustuarium where soldiers form two lines and beat a condemned man to death as he tries to run the gauntlet. After a while, you stop flinching at these spectacles. Violence becomes just another aspect of existence, like the weather or meal schedules. Your third year brings your first major battle. Not a skirmish, but a proper field engagement against a coalition of northern tribes. The experience defies description to anyone who hasn't lived through it. The wait is perhaps the worst part. Standing in formation for hours, hearing distant horns and drums, knowing that death approaches but not when it will arrive. Men pray, vomit, soil themselves in fear. Veterans stand stoically, having learned that fear wastes energy needed for survival. You focus on your breathing, on the weight of your shield, on the practice movements that will soon mean life or death. When the enemy finally appears, thousands of screaming warriors painting themselves and beat drums, the discipline of your unit is what keeps you alive. The testudo formation closes, shields locked together against the hail of primitive missiles. You can hear arrows and stones striking the shields above your head. Then comes the ground assault, wave after wave charging your lines. The real fighting bears no resemblance to training exercises. It's chaotic, deafening, confusingly close. You can smell your enemy's sweat and breath, feel his spittle on your face as he screams war cries. Your world narrows to the small space where your gladius can thrust between shields. The brutality shocks even after years of preparation. Men disemboweled, throats cut, skulls crushed. The ground becomes slick with blood and worse. You slip on a tangle of intestines, barely regaining your footing in time to parry a spear thrust. A comrade falls beside you, face suddenly gone, replaced by a red ruin from an axe blow. There's no time to process or mourn. The line must hold. You step over his body, close the gap, continue fighting mechanically. Hours pass in what feels like moments. Your arm burns with fatigue. Your lungs struggle for air in the press of bodies. When the battle finally ends, the tribal coalition breaking against the discipline of Roman lines, the aftermath is equally horrific. The field is carpeted with the dead and dying. Medics move among the Roman wounded, making quick assessments. This one might live with treatment. This one is beyond help. Mercy killings are performed quietly. Enemy wounded receive no such attention. They're either finished off quickly or left to die slowly, depending on the cruelty of individual soldiers. Prisoner taking is selective. Potential slaves or hostages saved, others dispatched without ceremony. You help gather your unit's dead, identifying bodies sometimes recognizable only by equipment or distinctive scars. Some are surprisingly intact, looking almost peaceful despite fatal wounds hidden beneath armour. Others are fragmented, requiring several men to collect scattered parts. The Legion is efficient even in death. Personal effects catalogued, valuable equipment salvaged for reuse, bodies prepared for cremation or burial, depending on regional practices and available time. By nightfall, funeral pyres burn across the battlefield, columns of smoke rising into darkening skies. Veterans drink heavily but quietly, lost in private thoughts rather than celebration. That night, sleep eludes you despite bone-deep exhaustion. When it finally comes, it brings vivid nightmares, dead comrades walking, enemies rising from fatal wounds, your own body opened and emptied while you watch. You wake repeatedly, gasping and disoriented. Around you other men also stir restlessly. Some weep silently, others stare blankly at nothing. A few pray to gods that seem increasingly distant. No one speaks of these reactions in daylight. Weakness cannot be acknowledged in the legions. By morning, masks of stoicism are firmly back in place. Grief and trauma buried beneath discipline and routine. The victory brings no real satisfaction, just relief at survival, and the knowledge that similar battles await in coming campaigns. You've changed fundamentally after this experience. Something inside you has hardened, or perhaps broken. You notice similar changes in surviving comrades. Men who once spoke of homes and families now focus entirely on immediate concerns. Long-term thinking becomes a luxury none can afford. The present moment, this meal, this march, this night's rest, expands to fill all awareness. It's a coping mechanism, this narrowing of perspective. Those who cannot manage this mental shift often find other escapes. Excessive drinking, reckless gambling, suicidal bravery in subsequent engagements. Your fourth year brings transfer to a more established fort as the frontier pushes further north. Here, a semblance of normal life resumes. The fort has proper facilities, stone barracks instead of leather tents, functional baths, even rudimentary entertainment in the form of an amphitheatre where gladiatorial games and executions provide distraction on rest days. The local settlement that has grown around the fort offers wine shops, brothels, and markets where you can supplement your rations when pay allows. It should feel like improvement, but after years on the raw frontier, this closer approximation of Roman civilization seems somehow artificial, a poor imitation of a home you barely remember. Disease strikes the fort midwinter, perhaps typhoid or dysentery, the medics cannot say for certain. It spreads rapidly through the barracks, despite quarantine attempts. Men die daily, bodies stacked like cordwood awaiting mass cremation. The symptoms are horrific: high fever, bloody diarrhea, delirium. You nurse several members of your contubernium through the illness, cleaning their soiled bedding, forcing water between cracked lips, listening to delirious confessions and pleas. 2 survive, 3 die in agony, calling for mothers and gods. You contract a milder case but recover, left weakened for months afterward. The epidemic eventually burns itself out, having claimed nearly a quarter of the garrison. Spring brings news that chills surviving troops. A major tribal rebellion has erupted in territories thought pacified. Settlements have been overrun, small garrisons massacred. Your depleted legion must respond immediately. The march is punishing, especially for those still recovering from winter illness. Men collapse from exhaustion, but are forced back to their feet by centurions who themselves look haggard and strained. You reach the rebellion's centre to find horrific scenes: Roman families crucified, bodies dismembered and arranged in ritual patterns, wells poisoned with corpses. The legion's response is equally merciless. Entire villages put to the sword, regardless of individual guilt. Crops burned, sacred groves desecrated. You participate in these reprisals mechanically, emotion long since scoured from such actions. The campaign stretches through summer and autumn, a grinding series of punitive expeditions rather than decisive battles. The rebels refuse conventional engagement, striking instead at supply lines and isolated units before melting into forests and marshes. Your century suffers steady attrition, men lost to ambushes, disease, accidents. Replacements arrive, young recruits whose ignorance and enthusiasm remind you painfully of yourself. Years earlier, you find yourself becoming the hardened veteran you once feared, teaching these newcomers the brutal realities of frontier service. When one asks how you've survived so long, you have no meaningful answer. Luck, perhaps, or simply the stubborn refusal to die in this God-forsaken place. By your 5th year, you've attained the status of immunis, exempt from menial duties due to developed skills as a carpenter, having apprenticed under the Legion's master builders. This brings marginally better conditions but increased responsibility. You supervise construction projects, design defensive improvements, train recruits in building techniques. The work is less physically punishing than frontline combat duty, but carries its own stresses. Mistakes in construction cost lives just as surely as tactical errors. A poorly built bridge that collapses under marching troops, a wall that fails during enemy assault. These failures mean deaths you must personally account for. Your 6th year brings the first serious injury. A collapsed scaffolding during fort repairs sends you falling 20 feet onto packed turf. Your left leg breaks in 2 places, your shoulder dislocates, several ribs crack on impact. The pain is blinding, consciousness coming and going in waves as comrades carry you to the valetudinarium. The Legion's medics are skilled but limited by ancient knowledge. They set the bones as best they can, binding the leg to straight wooden splints that make sleep nearly impossible. Recovery is agonizing and incomplete. The leg heals shorter than its mate, leaving you with a permanent limp. The shoulder never regains full mobility. In civilian life, such injuries would likely mean a trade change or disability support from family. In the Legions, they mean reassignment rather than discharge. You're moved to the Fabrica, the fort workshop, full-time, overseeing production of building materials and training others. It's less prestigious than combat roles, but extends your likely survival. Many injured veterans end up in these positions, creating a strange community of the broken but competent. Dark humour flourishes among these men. Jokes about matching limps, competitions over who has the most impressive scars, wagers on which newcomer will join their ranks next. It's a brotherhood of the damaged, finding solidarity in shared suffering. Your 10th year brings rare good fortune, promotion to Optio, second in command of a century. Despite your physical limitations, your experience and technical knowledge make you valuable in this administrative role. You now assist the centurion, maintain discipline, oversee training, and handle the endless paperwork that keeps the Legion functioning. The position comes with better quarters, a small private room rather than shared barracks, and double pay. It also brings new burdens. You must now enforce the harsh discipline you once resented, order men into situations you know may kill them, report infractions that will result in severe punishment. The moral compromises accumulate. You learn to look away from certain activities that help morale, even if they technically violate regulations. You participate in the system of bribes and favours that once disgusted you, now seeing it as necessary lubrication for the military machine. You become harder on recruits than you intended, knowing that coddling them only ensures their deaths in real combat. You drink more heavily than before, finding it necessary to quiet the voices of doubt that speak in quiet moments. You're becoming the very officer you once hated, and you recognise this transformation with a mix of self-loathing and resignation. Your 15th year brings another northern campaign, this one against coastal raiders causing havoc along supply routes. Your depleted legion must respond immediately. The march is punishing, especially for those still recovering from winter illness. Men collapse from exhaustion, but are forced back to their feet by centurions who themselves look haggard and strained. You reach the rebellion's centre to find horrific scenes, Roman families crucified, bodies dismembered and arranged in ritual patterns, wells poisoned with corpses. The legion's response is equally merciless. Entire villages put to the sword, regardless of individual guilt, crops burned, sacred groves desecrated. You participate in these reprisals mechanically, emotion long since scoured from such actions. The campaign stretches through summer and autumn, a grinding series of punitive expeditions rather than decisive battles. The rebels refuse conventional engagement, striking instead at supply lines and isolated units before melting into forests and marshes. Your century suffers steady attrition, men lost to ambushes, disease, accidents. Replacements arrive, young recruits whose ignorance and enthusiasm remind you painfully of yourself. Years earlier, you find yourself becoming the hardened veteran you once feared, teaching these newcomers the brutal realities of frontier service. When one asks how you've survived so long, you have no meaningful answer. Luck, perhaps, or simply the stubborn refusal to die in this God-forsaken place. By your 5th year, you've attained the status of immunis, exempt from menial duties due to developed skills as a carpenter, having apprenticed under the Legion's master builders. This brings marginally better conditions but increased responsibility. You supervise construction projects, design defensive improvements, train recruits in building techniques. The work is less physically punishing than frontline combat duty, but carries its own stresses. Mistakes in construction cost lives just as surely as tactical errors. A poorly built bridge that collapses under marching troops, a wall that fails during enemy assault. These failures mean deaths you must personally account for. Your 6th year brings the first serious injury. A collapsed scaffolding during fort repairs sends you falling 20 feet onto packed earth. Your left leg breaks in 2 places, your shoulder dislocates, several ribs crack on impact. The pain is blinding, consciousness coming and going in waves as comrades carry you to the valetudinarium. The Legion's medics are skilled but limited by ancient knowledge. They set the bones as best they can, binding the leg to straight wooden splints that make sleep nearly impossible. Recovery is agonizing and incomplete. The leg heals shorter than its mate, leaving you with a permanent limp. The shoulder never regains full mobility. In civilian life, such injuries would likely mean a trade change or disability support from family. In the Legions, they mean reassignment rather than discharge. You're moved to the Fabrica, the fort workshop, full-time, overseeing production of building materials and training others. It's less prestigious than combat roles, but extends your likely survival. Many injured veterans end up in these positions, creating a strange community of the broken but competent. Dark humour flourishes among these men, jokes about matching limps, competitions over who has the most impressive scars, wagers on which newcomer will join their ranks next. It's a brotherhood of the damaged, finding solidarity in shared suffering. Your 10th year brings rare good fortune, promotion to Optio, second in command of a century. Despite your physical limitations, your experience and technical knowledge make you valuable in this administrative role. You now assist the centurion, maintain discipline, oversee training, and handle the endless paperwork that keeps the Legion functioning. The position comes with better quarters, a small private room rather than shared barracks, and double pay. It also brings new burdens. You must now enforce the harsh discipline you once resented, order men into situations you know may kill them, report infractions that will result in severe punishment. The moral compromises accumulate. You learn to look away from certain activities that help morale, even if they technically violate regulations. You participate in the system of bribes and favours that once disgusted you, now seeing it as necessary lubrication for the military machine. You become harder on recruits than you intended, knowing that coddling them only ensures their deaths in real combat. You drink more heavily than before, finding it necessary to quiet the voices of doubt that speak in quiet moments. You're becoming the very officer you once hated, and you recognise this transformation with a mix of self-loathing and resignation. Your 15th year brings another northern campaign, this one against coastal raiders causing havoc along supply routes. Some nights, sitting outside your modest home watching stars wheel across the sky, the same stars you observe from countless campaign camps across the Empire, you reflect on the arc of your life, from frightened recruit to battered veteran to aging colonist. Was it worth it? The question has no simple answer. Rome gave you structure, purpose, skills, eventual citizenship, this plot of land. It took your youth, your health, your innocence, comrades you loved more than brothers. The equation balances differently on different days. Sometimes you feel you served a worthy cause, protecting civilization from chaos. Other times, you wonder if you are merely a tool for wealthy men in distant Rome, expanding their influence through your blood and pain. As old age creeps closer, you hear rumours of trouble brewing in the Empire. New enemies press at distant borders. Internal strife grows between competing factions. The great machine you served faithfully shows signs of strain. Younger veterans returning from recent campaigns bring disturbing reports. Declining quality of equipment, corruption, reaching higher levels of command, recruits with less training rushed to dangerous postings. You listen, hearing echoes of complaints from your own time. Perhaps the legions were always this way, flawed but functional, or perhaps something fundamental is truly changing. Either way, it's no longer your battle to fight. In your 60th year, nearly 3 decades after discharge, pain becomes your constant companion. The leg never properly healed, and now arthritis has settled into every joint. Your digestive system, damaged by years of poor rations and contaminated water, makes eating an ordeal rather than pleasure. Breathing grows difficult in damp weather, lungs permanently weakened by old pneumonia contracted during the winter campaigns. You walk less each year, your world contracting to home and immediate surroundings. Your wife manages most physical tasks now, assisted by a neighbour's son who works your land in exchange for a portion of its yield. Most of your contemporaries have already made their final march to whatever awaits beyond this life. Funeral ceremonies for veterans occur with increasing frequency, each one thinner in attendance as the old guard dwindles. You attend when health permits, standing or sitting as straight as your damaged body allows during the traditional honours. Each departure leaves the world less populated with those who remember what you remember, who understand without explanation. You feel yourself becoming not just a physical relic, but a living repository of a time slipping from memory into history. On particularly clear evenings, you sometimes take out your old military gear, kept carefully preserved in a wooden chest. The gladius still fits your hand perfectly, though you can no longer wield it effectively. The worn leather of your belt still carries faint stains no amount of cleaning could remove. Your military diploma, the precious document granting citizenship and proving honourable service, remains your most valued possession. You handle these items ritually, connecting to the young man you once were, the brothers long fallen, the empire served at such personal cost. Then you return them carefully to their resting place, closing the lid on that chapter of your life until the next visitation. When death finally approaches in your 63rd winter, it comes not in the glorious blaze of battle you once expected, but quietly, through illness that gradually saps remaining strength. You face this final enemy with the same stoicism that carried you through decades of a military hardship. No heroic last words, no dramatic gestures, just the quiet acceptance of a veteran who has long lived with the knowledge of his own mortality. Your wife tends you with practiced care, having nursed many through their final passage in this frontier community. The pain recedes as consciousness fades intermittently, bringing strange clarity in its withdrawal. In these lucid moments between worlds, your mind travels freely across time and space. You're simultaneously the frightened recruit swearing the oath, the battle-hardened legionary forming the testudo against screaming barbarians, the injured veteran overseeing construction, the retired colonist coaxing crops from stubborn soil. All these selves coexist now, the artificial boundaries of time dissolved by approaching death. You see with perfect clarity the web of cause and effect, choice and consequence that shaped your existence. Not just your own small life, but the vast complex entity of Rome itself, built by countless men like you, unnamed in official histories, but essential to everything accomplished. Your final thoughts aren't of glory or empire, but of individual faces. The centurion who showed unexpected kindness during your first campaign, the Britannic woman who tended your wounds after a skirmish, though you were technically her enemy, the recruit you saved during a river crossing, who years later carried you from a battlefield when your leg shattered, your contubernian brothers sharing their rations when you were too ill to collect your own, your wife whose calloused hands held yours through nightmares and pain. These connections, not grand ideals of Rome or duty, were what actually sustained you, what made the harsh life bearable, what in the end mattered. As consciousness fades for the final time, there's neither fear nor regret, just a soldier's acceptance that all marches eventually end. Your last sensation is warmth, spreading through a body long accustomed to pain, like sunlight finally reaching frozen ground. Then darkness, or perhaps light too bright for mortal eyes to comprehend. The veterans' colony will note your passing with appropriate ceremony. Your name will be added to local records, your modest possessions distributed according to your will. Another former legionary returned to the earth he once helped conquer. The empire continues its great business, oblivious to this small conclusion. And yet, something remains, not just in official documents or personal possessions, not just in the memories of dwindling survivors who knew you, something more profound and lasting. Your hands helped build roads still used centuries later. Your blood mixed with soil where future generations grow crops, never knowing what fertilized their harvest. The frontier you helped secure allows civilization to flourish where once there was only wilderness. The sons and daughters of both Romans and conquered peoples live in a world partially shaped by your anonymous service. This is the true immortality of the legionary. not glory or fame, but the accumulated impact of countless small actions, persisting long after individual names are forgotten. So the next time you walk on ancient roads, or stand before remaining fragments of Roman architecture, or read histories of great campaigns and famous generals, spare a thought for the men unmentioned in those accounts, the ordinary legionaries who built the roads and aqueducts, who died in unnamed skirmishes, who endured decades of hardship in service to an ideal larger than themselves. Their reality was far from the glamorous portrayal in modern entertainment. It was brutal, painful, often tragically short, but it was also real, consequential, worthy of remembrance. For now, as you drift into sleep listening to this account, reflect on how fortunate we are to live in times where such extreme hardship is no longer the common experience of so many. Our modern discomforts, while valid in their own context, pale beside the daily reality of ancient military life. Perhaps this perspective brings a certain peace, a gratitude for the relative comfort of our pillows and beds, for medical care beyond cauterization and crude surgery, for food that doesn't consist primarily of coarse-grained porridge. Let the distant suffering of Roman legionaries provide strange comfort as you descend into dreams far more pleasant than theirs typically were. And if, in those dreams, you should happen to glimpse formations of men marching across misty northern landscapes, shields locked in perfect formation, faces set in grim determination, give them the silent acknowledgement they rarely received in life. The unsung builders of history, the ordinary men who made possible all that came after, then turned toward more peaceful visions, grateful that their world remains safely in the past, accessible only through the words of historians and the whispered echoes of collective memory. Sleep well, knowing that you need not rise before dawn at the sound of the bucina horn. No centurion will drive you through training until muscles scream and lungs burn. No enemy waits beyond the darkness to test your courage and skill. The hardships of the Roman legionary remain safely contained in history, a story to ease you toward rest rather than a reality to endure. As your consciousness fades, like a legionary's at the end of an exhausting march, surrender to the gentle oblivion that they too sought after days of unimaginable toil. This is perhaps the greatest luxury we have that they lacked, the ability to visit their world briefly through imagination, then return safely to our own. Good night, and remember, some forms of boredom are far preferable to certain types of excitement. The tedium of peaceful sleep infinitely surpasses the heart-pounding terror of ancient battle. May your dreams be as uneventful as a quiet day in a veteran's colony, and your waking refreshed by the knowledge that you face challenges far less dire than those confronted by the common soldiers of Rome. Until next time, this has been Boring History for Sleep, marching steadily toward the peaceful conquest of insomnia.